If you've ever looked at your period blood and thought, is that normal? You're not alone. Period blood can be bright red, dark brown, pink, watery, thick, clotty, and the internet can make it feel like every color means something terrifying. So let's slow this down. In most cases, period blood color is simply telling you about flow speed, oxidation, and where you are in your cycle. But sometimes color and texture changes, especially when they're new for you, persistent, or combined with symptoms like pain, very heavy bleeding, fever, strong odor, or unusual discharge can be a sign you deserve assessment. We'll cover what different period blood colors commonly mean, what's normal, what's worth checking, and what to say at your GP appointment if you're worried. Period blood isn't just blood. It's a mix of blood, the lining of the womb, which is the endometrium, cervical mucus, and sometimes small clots. So color and texture can change depending on how quickly the blood leaves the uterus, how heavy your flow is, whether the blood has time to oxidize and turn darker, and how much lining and mucus is mixed in. Bright red period blood usually means fresh blood and a more active flow. It's commonly seen on heavier days, early in your period, and when the blood is leaving the uterus quickly. Bright red can be completely normal, especially if it matches your usual pattern. You don't have severe pain, and you're not soaking through products unusually fast. Bright red might need checking if you have bleeding after sex, bleeding between periods that's new for you, bleeding after menopause, or bleeding that's very heavy, along with dizziness or faintness. Dark red or burgundy blood often means the flow is still significant, but the blood has spent a bit longer before leaving the body. It can be normal throughout a period, especially if your periods are heavier or last longer. What matters more than the exact shade is how heavy it is, how long it lasts, and whether it comes with other symptoms. Brown discharge or brown blood is usually older blood that's oxidized, meaning it's been in the uterus or vagina a little longer. This is very common at the beginning of a period as it starts, at the end as it tapers off, with spotting after childbirth or during hormonal changes, like coming off contraception or entering perimenopause. Brown blood is usually not dangerous on its own, but it might need checking if it's accompanied by strong odor, fever, pelvic pain, or feeling unwell. It also deserves advice if you think you might be pregnant, because spotting can happen in early pregnancy and should be assessed in context. And if spotting becomes frequent and persistent, that's worth checking too. Black period blood can look alarming, but most of the time it's simply very old blood that's oxidized further. This often happens when flow is slower, or blood has been in the uterus or vagina longer before leaving the body. You might notice very dark brown or black blood at the very start of a period, as leftover blood from the previous cycle, or at the end of a period as bleeding slows, or with light spotting, or during hormonal changes, including some contraception changes. Black blood is usually not a problem on its own, but it deserves assessment if it comes with a strong unpleasant smell and unusual discharge, fever, pelvic pain, or feeling unwell. Also, if you have very heavy bleeding or feel faint, if you're pregnant or could be pregnant and you have bleeding. Or if you have bleeding after sex, persistent bleeding between periods, or any bleeding after menopause. And one practical scenario to be aware of is a retained tampon. This can cause a very strong odor and abnormal discharge. It happens more often than people think, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, but it should be checked promptly. Pink blood usually means the blood is mixed with cervical fluid or discharge, so it looks lighter. Pink spotting can happen at the very start or end of a period. Some women get mid-cycle spotting around ovulation. It can happen after sex due to cervical irritation, and it can happen with hormonal contraception changes. Pink can also show up if your flow is light and short. Pink spotting needs checking if it's new for you and keeps happening, if it happens repeatedly after sex, if you have pelvic pain, if you have bleeding after menopause, or if you're pregnant or could be pregnant. Orange can happen when blood mixes with discharge. Sometimes it's harmless, but it can also be linked to infection if it comes with strong odor, itching or burning, pelvic pain, pain when you wee, or unusual discharge color or consistency. If orange discharge comes with symptoms, it's worth asking for assessment and swabs. Grey discharge isn't typical period blood. If you see grey discharge, especially with a fishy smell, it can be a sign of bacterial vaginosis or another infection. And if you're pregnant, grey discharge should be assessed promptly. Texture matters as well. Watery or very thin flow can happen with light periods, hormonal changes, or when blood mixes with cervical fluid. But if it's persistently watery alongside other symptoms or unusual bleeding patterns, it's worth checking. Clots can be normal, especially on heavy days. Your body uses clotting to manage bleeding, but clots might need checking if they're large, for example, bigger than a 50p coin. If you're flooding through pads or tampons, if you're changing protection very frequently, if you feel dizzy, breathless, or exhausted, which can suggest anemia, or if this is a new pattern for you. Heavy bleeding with clots can be linked to things like fibroids, adenomyosis, bleeding disorders, or hormonal causes, and you deserve proper assessment. Color changes alone are rarely diagnostic, but color plus symptoms can matter. Please get checked if you have bleeding after sex, bleeding between periods that's new or persistent, bleeding after menopause, severe period pain that's worsening or affecting your life, very heavy bleeding with flooding, soaking through, or large clots, fever with strong odor and pelvic pain, new bleeding patterns alongside weight loss, ongoing fatigue, or feeling unwell, or possible pregnancy with bleeding. Instead of focusing only on color, ask, has my flow changed significantly? Has my pain changed significantly? Has my timing changed, like more frequent, longer, or irregular? Am I having bleeding after sex? Am I having symptoms of anemia, like fatigue, dizziness, or breathlessness? Is there odor, itch, burning, or fever? Your body has a baseline. A sustained change from your baseline deserves attention. If you go to your GP with concerns about bleeding changes, they may ask about your cycle and symptoms, ask about contraception and pregnancy possibility, and offer blood tests, including checking for anemia. Depending on your symptoms, they may also consider a pelvic exam, swabs, an ultrasound, or referral to gynecology. You can ask the following questions for clarity and plan. Can we assess heavy bleeding properly, not just treat it repeatedly? Can we check for anemia and iron deficiency? Do I need swabs to rule out infection? Do I need an ultrasound to check for fibroids or adenomyosis? What would make you refer me to gynecology? You're not being dramatic, you're being responsible. Most period color changes are normal, especially at the start and end of bleeding. Black blood is usually just older blood that's taken longer to come out, so it looks darker once it's oxidized. But if your pattern is changing, bleeding is heavy, you're getting new or worsening pain, or you have symptoms that don't feel right for you, you deserve an assessment and a clear plan. And if you want a simple visual guide to what discharge colors can mean too, tap the video on your screen now. Vaginal discharge colors explained.